The Kurten Report.
The United Kingdom is in a parlous economic state, and to talk about that and many other dreadful things that are going on with this dreadful Starmer regime is former MEP Godfrey Bloom. I'm going to bring him on the stage now. And Godfrey, welcome to the show. It's a great honor to have you on with me on the Kurten Report today.
Hi, David. Always good to be on and good to see you.
Oh, good to see you too. I'm going to start with this graphic, which shows. Now, this is a piece of modeling here showing how millionaires are either moving to countries or leaving countries. You can't really see the different countries there, but at the top is the United Arab Emirates. If I zoom into the bottom here, it shows that the UK is winning in losing millionaires, if you like. We are losing the most millionaires, with 16,500 projected to leave the country this year. I hear already 14,000 have left since the Starmer regime took office just a year ago. This is really bad for this country. Do you have any idea why this is happening?
Well, I still do some city consultancy work. So I'm still in touch with the movers and shakers in the late 20s and early 30s, young professionals who are going in significant numbers, and they haven't been going like this since the late-ish 1970s, when a lot of my friends actually went abroad, became expats and worked abroad, which is becoming easier to do these days with modern machinery. So you see, why would you stay? It isn't a question of why they're going, it's why would you stay? I was born in 1949. The tax take these days is now the highest in my lifetime. The highest in my lifetime. That's 75 years. Then if you want to start a business, you have to pay employment tax, PAYE, pensions. You have to, employing somebody is a mug's game. So you can't actually expand your business. So there's absolutely nothing going for you at all by staying in this country if you're a young go-getter. And of course, in the 1970s, what happened, Maggie Thatcher came in, for better or for worse, and she reversed all that. And suddenly you could score in Maggie's Britain in the 1980s and early 90s, and it was worth staying. And a lot of them came back. But what we have now is we are living in a kleptocracy. The government makes no apology for actually stealing your money in all its forms. Doesn't matter what you do, it's out to steal your money. For the simple reason, two reasons really, that most senior politicians in this government are sociopaths, and you can actually tell that by looking into their eyes on TV, and that gives away the eyes give it away. And the other thing is, why would you? But this Keynesian belief, or sometimes called modern monetary theory, that somehow public spending increases the wealth of the nation. Well, of course, public spending actually takes money out of the system. It's the worst possible thing you could do. And now we have 6 million people in the public employ, and growing every year by significant amounts, and probably several more millions of people who are linked into government contracts or quangos or whatever it happens to be. So we have this extraordinary situation. If we go on like this, everybody will be working for the government, and there'll be a very huge proportion of those people who come in from abroad, not with the entrepreneurial spirit, perhaps of the Huguenots or even the East African Asians, but in order to suck up the teeth of welfare. So this is bound to happen. But of course, you see, people in the public sector, civil servants and politicians of all political hues, don't understand this, never have understood this. They've actually been brought up through schools now, a second generation in universities, who actually believe that public spending is somehow good. And I was listening to your earlier speaker there, and he was a bit surprised about why some things are happening. We're now in the second generation, where critical thinking is taken away from people. It's not encouraged at schools. It's a box-ticking world that we live in. It's highly regulated. And of course, the levers of power, and I've said this before, I think on your program, though, the levers of power are headed by the English middle class.
Mm.
And the English middle class, who actually run everything, the civil service and politics and all the rest of it, there is no more stupid genre than the English middle class. They are utterly, utterly hopeless, which is why we're in the poo. They couldn't wait to go and get jabbed. They couldn't wait to fall in with anything. They will do exactly. And he was talking about television, but it's not just my generation, the boomers, or he does make a valid point. It's everybody. It's everybody from probably 25 years up who believe anything they see on the TV or hear anything on the TV or the radio, mainstream legacy media. And I did a course with the Smithsonian Institute a little while ago, a couple of years ago, and it was on because I couldn't understand it either, like your previous speaker, and indeed you, David. I don't understand why people behave as they do. So I did this long course of 25 lectures, long distance learning, as it were, to see if I could find that out. I found out very little, but one thing I did find out was that 80% of the population, 80% of the population, it's not English or Scots or American or French, 80% of the human population will go with the flow.
Right.
And of course, that's all the government needs. They only need 80% of the people to do as they're told. So the people outside that dynamic, people like you, me, and your previous speaker, so on and so forth, they're sidelined. And he was making a point, a very valid point, why he's not getting credit. In 1998, when I was managing quite significant pension funds in the city, I was the first person to explain what Gordon Brown's tax on investment income would come within the pension funds. And he put a 10% tax on dividend income. And I went on to BBC on a Saturday morning to explain actually how this worked and how it would damage pension funds because it would take away discretionary increases. They then checked what I had to say with a major consultancy practice, Coopers and Lybrand, and they credited them with the original story and not me. This isn't new. This isn't new because Coopers and Lybrand and these big people are part of the establishment. BlackRock, Vanguard, all these people are part. So they're only going to credit people within the game. They're never going to credit people like you and me outside the game because, as my great auntie Betty used to say, if we had new neighbours in her little village in Nottinghamshire, God, they're not one of us. The trouble is with you and me, David, we're not one of us.
Right, yeah. That is an extraordinary figure, that 80% of the population, wherever they are, the human population, doesn't matter whether they're in the UK, Australia, Argentina, whatever, they'll just go along with the flow. But we're outside of that, I think, and we're just looking at it and saying, well, don't do that. These people who are leading you are just leading you into oblivion and debt and death and disease and destruction, basically. And I just think, can we get control of the country and restore our nation, which is what I've been trying to do with my party for the last 5 years, the Heritage Party, and you've been doing it. But before that, we were together in UKIP back in the day fighting for Brexit. Is it possible to get rid of this whole class of people that it goes across Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, Green, the World Economic Forum, the Trilateral Commission, whatever the organizations you like to call it? They all seem to be one blob of people that are just leading us down into hell. Can we get rid of them?
Well, my hypothesis has always been that nobody goes to the barricades unless they've got an empty tummy or somebody is burning down their house. And of course, eventually in the French Revolution, which is, a very good example, it had to get really bad before the revolution came. And of course, when they got rid of the Bourbons, and they brought back very shortly warfare and the Bonapartes. So you can only get rid of it, it seems. Then you've got to go through chaos. And there aren't many civil wars or civil upheavals that actually do anybody any good. And I think also the British, the English in particular, are very slow to take to the streets, as it were. So I'm not quite sure how we get out of it. And my view, and I've said this on many a channel in the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks, is you have to look after your own. You have to. you have to say, okay, the country's going to hell in a handcart. What can I do for me and my family? And the way you can do that, you have to start with the smallest well-tried unit that we have in human society, which is the family. And then you have to make sure that you're okay. So you don't have your money in a bank. You go as close to off-grid as you can. And so this is the only way that you can look, and you take your children out of the state education system if you can for home education, which is no surprise that they've made that progressively more difficult because they must control young minds. And you see, I was horrified to see gay pride marches, army cadets and sea cadets and Air Force cadets, kids of 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 in gay pride marches. And one wonders who are now controlling it. It used to be retired soldiers and sailors and so on and so forth, controlling these things and doing a wonderful job. Now, kids are being indoctrinated politically at very young ages, the like of which, of course, we saw with the Hitler Youth. We saw the Hitler Youth. That was a sort of the main pillar of that side. And of course, they fought right up into the suburbs of Berlin, right to the end, kids of 14 and 15. It's a very dangerous phenomenon. And as to what we can do about it, other than getting yourself and your family off grid, I'm buggered if I know.
Well, you got to look after your own family, and then hopefully families can meet up and, make communities with families in local areas and so on. But I'm still trying to push on and make a difference in politics, and I'm still here. It's very, very tough because you're up against a majority of people who've got a lot of power and they've got a lot of money as well. It's very hard for people on our side of things to make an impact as much as they do. We do try because they can just create money out of nothing, which is what the Bank of England and the Fed does. And that is something that I think people don't realize happens with this financial system that we've got. Is inherently unstable, and it just causes inflation. But I do worry that the country is going to go bankrupt because we have a national debt of 2.8 trillion pounds, which is, heaven knows how much every household will have to pay if they wanted that all back. 30, tens of thousands, I imagine.
Well, of course, what will happen is that because the government and central banks can print money, which is already digital. People say, oh, what about this digital money? It's already digital. You go into the bank, let's say you want to borrow £25,000 to buy a car and you're a good customer. They will create that. The bank clerk will create it on their screen, credit your account, and you go and buy your car. And that £25,000, which is in point of fact digital, goes to the person selling the car. We're already there. So the only thing you can do is to have the only real money, of course, is gold coin in specie in your pocket. If you don't have that, or in a good lockup somewhere, not a bank, you have this problem. And of course, people say, oh, well, we need to reform the system or something. If you work for BlackRock or Vanguard or Bill Gates, or the public sector with index-linked salaries and pensions, why would you want change? Now, what will happen, of course, when we saw Greece go down temporarily about 15 or 16 years ago, it's when retired teachers and civil servants, the check doesn't arrive. And when the check does arrive, they're getting paid in shirt buttons, basically. When your pint of bitter has gone from already outrageous £5 or £6 for a pint, it's gone to 30 or 40, like the Weimar Republic. And your meal out's gone, and there's nothing you can do, and you can't afford petrol in your car, you can't afford this, you can't afford that. Interest rates have gone through the roof, so you can't afford your mortgage. That's when people go to the barricades. Because I'm sorry to say this, I'm an old man now, and I really don't give a shit, David. Most people are unbelievably thick and stupid.
Right, they don't realize the system is just taking control, and they're losing the pound in their pocket, basically, aren't they?
They are indeed. I know people, and you will know people, usually your English middle class or their equivalent. You could set fire to their trousers and they'd burn to death and still not know what was going on.
like a lot of people don't, and this is they just, I think when it comes to elections, a lot of people they look at the sun or something, and then they see yeah, the sun says vote for this, or the sun says don't vote for them because if you do, page 3 is going to be ugly tomorrow, and then they just go and do what they say. You know, I'm engaged and you're engaged. I'm on social media all the time. I'm writing things, I'm responding to things, I'm making videos, I'm trying to educate people and report on things. But the tragedy is, I realize, you know, probably fewer than 1% of the population actually see what I put out. And it's the same is maybe for even for people on some of these alternative TV channels. The reach is, they make good stuff, but the reach is limited. How do we get beyond that?
Well, it's now. I'll give you an example. I've never quite worked this out. My YouTube following has doubled in the last year. X, I'm stuck on 40,000 on X, or 45,000 on X, and it's been so now for over 4 years. And everybody tells me, my wife doesn't read anything I write on X. She doesn't get it. She's a follower, and people sometimes they say, "Oh, it was nice to hear from you the other day." I post on X every day, and sometimes people don't hear from me for 6 months because it doesn't get to them. The whole system is rigged. Never mind Elon Musk saying, "Oh, it's this, that, and it's not censored." Of course, it's censored. They censored me for the last 4 years. And I put a picture up the other day of my wife and I. We were walking in the lakes. In the lakes, we like to go fell walking. I put it up, and just to say, you know, this is Thirlmere or whatever it happens to be. Lovely, the sun shining. You know, just to sort of lighten up the load. It doesn't always want to be heavy breathing. And it was marked sensitive content.
That's ridiculous, isn't it? But I know you're censored because I to find you, I have to, you know, you don't come up. Even if I type in your first name, it would normally you come up automatically. I have to type in the whole thing with the underscore or whatever, and otherwise you don't come up. But it's absolutely outrageous because you're supposed to have free speech on X. But I'm glad you're on.
You just don't. I'm starting a new channel, a new X name. See if I can get all AI. My producer's always writing to them and getting in touch with them. You can't get anybody. Nobody answers the bloody phone. So I'm going to start again. I haven't worked out what name it will be, but I'm going to ask all my friends, and you'll be one of them, David, to just promulgate that for me and to say, if you want to get Godfrey Bloom on X, then you have to type in this new name. He's got Herbert Spencer or Mr. Chang or Seneca or something like that. I haven't worked it out yet. I'm working with I'll have to start again to get out of the AI trap.
Yeah, I think you do. That's what some people do. They start again and then they have to build up their audience from zero. It's terrible. Because yeah, like you say, there's no person there that you can talk to. It's all run by computers. But look, Godfrey, it's been really great to have you on the show. I wanted to talk to you also about the situation in Ukraine and the situation in the Middle East, because I know you're an expert on those things and you have, you know, really, really good things to say and a very good understanding of what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing in terms of war. But I think you know, just quickly to finish off, I think we sort of have the same opinion that it's not the right thing for our country to do, to be getting involved in these third-party conflicts. Would you say that's sort of what you think?
Yeah, war is a really dangerous thing. Now, most people think, if they haven't been involved in the military in any way, that war is something like, you know, the kids play those war games. It goes ding, 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 ding. They think that's war. Now, what they need to do is go and visit places like East Grinstead and go to the Makindu ward and see the burns unit and the amputations unit. War is a very nasty thing, and you very rarely have to fight a war. Occasionally, you have to fight a war. We had to fight for the Falklands. It was British and it was invaded by a fascist junta. We couldn't let that one go, but we don't need to fight other people's wars. I am not interested in the Middle East, particularly apart from genocide, which I think is disgraceful and we should have no part in. But generally speaking, we have no longer, the empire's gone, no interest there. We have no interest in the Ukraine. We should not have boots on the ground there. We should not be spending billions of pounds a year giving money to Zelensky and all his criminal gangsters to perpetuate the war, which is already lost. War is a very bad thing. I'm not a pacifist, David, as you know. I was a soldier. Yeah. I'm not a pacifist. I believe in defending our own islands, not other people's bloody islands. Yeah. And the biggest danger on today's planet, believe it or not, really without any doubt in my view, are the bloody Americans, Washington. And I have loads and loads of American friends. I have American kin, and I can't believe as a baby boomer whose parents came through the war, serving with Americans. I've served with Americans and British Army on the Rhine. And I know your average American citizen is a good, home-loving, family-loving person. There are criminals and gangsters in Washington, run very often by people like Mossad, the industrial military complex. These are very, very, very bad people. And it's got to stop. And the sooner it stops, the sooner innocent women and children in thousands and thousands will stop dying all over the Middle East and in the Ukraine. It's got to stop. But at the moment, the only thing that seems to talk globally at the moment is money. It's disgraceful. And I think sooner or later this will have to stop, because some of the people that have been bullied by these American proxies are now armed to the situation where they can fight back. And we saw that Iranian strike on Israel. Israel thought it could strike anywhere it wanted to with American backing without retaliation of any sort. They've learnt that the hard way.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk about how many millionaires are leaving this country, have a look and see who's leaving Israel at the moment. And they've brought it on themselves. They've brought it on themselves. So let's hope that everybody can take a step back and start reinventing diplomacy. Diplomacy has disappeared from our planet. Everybody's stopped talking to each other. We need to start talking to each other sensibly. And it's got to stop. Otherwise, it's forever wars. It's war after war after war. It can't go on. And of course, I'll just finish up with one other point, David, if I may.
Yeah.
These Oreshnik missiles and hypersonic missiles. There is no defense. They travel at 12,000 miles an hour. They don't need a nuclear warhead. People are under the impression they need the kinetic energy is equivalent to a small nuclear warhead. So you can wipe out whole cities without a nuclear warhead, and there's no defense. There is no defense. And sooner or later, Parliament will have to call people like MI6 to account to say, why are you doing this? Why are you risking us in a war? The Tobias Ellwoods of this world, who seem to be somehow clinically insane. Nobody wins from a war, especially long-distance war with hypersonic missiles. But then, you go to your local pub, as I often do. Nobody actually gives a shit, really. Nobody cares, do they? The 80% rule. The 80% rule.
The majority of people just want to get on with their lives, bring up their families, go about their business, and you've got all these crazy warmongers like Tobias Ellwood, like you said, and it seems the entire class of people running NATO and running NATO countries are just like aggressive teenagers, and they really need to, be given a bit of a beating around the backside and been made to shut up, I think, and just to let every one of us go on with our own lives in peace. Anyway, look, Godfrey, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the show, and as always, great to hear your wisdom and experience. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot, David. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Australian National Review is Australia's first real, free and independent press. One with no editorial control by the elite, but a publication that can generate critical thinkers and critical debate, and hold those spreading mistruths and deliberate propaganda in mainstream media to account. News with a difference that will be educational, compelling, and create a platform for political and social change in this country, and address the real issues facing this country and the world.